Vincent Dorian slammed the door of his black Porsche with the kind of finality that screamed, "Do not disturb." He didn't care that the ocean breeze ruffled his hair or that the sun was already beginning to warm the quiet stretch of private beach in front of the house. This week was supposed to be his escape. No meetings, no investors, no fake smiles at cocktail parties, just silence, solitude, and the kind of peace you can only buy when you're a 29-year-old tech millionaire who'd sold his company at 25 and had been dodging people ever since. He dropped his duffel bag in the foyer of the modern glass home he'd rented for the week on the California coast. Everything was pristine, clean lines, open space, the kind of place that looked untouched, like no one had ever dared to breathe too loudly inside it, exactly what he wanted. That was until a loud, metallic clank echoed from the other side of the fence. He froze. Another noise. Laughter this time. Followed by a woman's voice, light, frustrated, and definitely not quiet. "Oh, come on, you stupid ladder, don't betray me now." Vincent walked to the window and peeked through the slats of the blinds. His jaw tightened, but not from irritation. His neighbor, apparently, was a woman in shorts and a paint-streaked tank top, balancing precariously on a ladder while trying to hang wind chimes on her porch. Her hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and she looked like she belonged in a farmer's market catalog. She was talking to herself, arguing with the ladder like it had feelings. He was definitely not supposed to be curious. But he was. The ladder wobbled. She let out a squeak and then toppled backward. Vincent didn't think. He was already out the door and sprinting across the grass. She landed on her back in the sand, eyes wide, breath knocked out of her. He dropped beside her, brushing sand off her arm. "You okay?" he asked, voice low and controlled, like he hadn't just sprinted 100 feet. Her gaze met his and blinked. Where did you come from?" "I live next door." Her brows shot up. "The silent glass castle, I thought it was empty. Just got here for the week." She sat up, brushing sand off her thighs. "Well, you just saved me from eating gravel, so thanks." "I'm Poppy Vance." He hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Vincent, just Vincent." He didn't answer. Instead, he stood and offered her a hand. She took it without hesitation, her palm warm against his. She was different, unfiltered, and clearly not from the same world as him. "You're bleeding," she said, pointing to a scrape on his knuckle. He looked down. "It's nothing." She walked toward her porch. "Come on, I'll clean it up." "It's the least I can do after you caught me falling off my own stupidity." He followed, against every instinct telling him to go back to his glass box and shut the world out. Her house was lived in. Cozy. There were books stacked on side tables, string lights hanging from the ceiling, and the scent of lavender in the air. A ceramic mug, half full of paintbrushes, sat on the kitchen counter. He hadn't seen a space like that in years. She grabbed a first aid kit and dabbed his knuckle with cotton. "You're really quiet," she said without looking up. "I came here to be alone." She glanced up at him, eyes dancing. "And yet, here you are in my kitchen." He almost smiled. The next morning, he tried to ignore the sound of music playing from the house next door. It wasn't loud, just persistent, cheerful, like the girl who lived there. He made it until noon before giving up and walking the beach to clear his head. He didn't expect to find her sitting by the water with a sketchpad in her lap, sunglasses perched on her head. "You again," she said, not even looking up. "You're not exactly low profile," she grinned. "Neither are you, Mr. Rented Glass House with a Porsche." He raised a brow. "You always this nosy?" "I prefer observant." She turned the sketchpad toward him. "See, I even drew your house." It was surprisingly good, detailed, alive. "You an artist?" "I teach art at the local school, but on summers I just paint and sell prints online." He nodded slowly. "So, you're the opposite of me." She tilted her head. "What are you?" He hesitated. "Used to run a tech company, sold it, now I float," she repeated, amused. "Like a ghost," he gave a small shrug, "more like a person who doesn't know what to do next." She looked at him, then really looked. "Well, lucky for you, I'm a firm believer that people figure it out, if they stop running long enough." He didn't answer, but he sat down beside her. Over the next few days, it became impossible not to see her. She'd wave when watering her plants. She'd offer him muffins she'd baked. She'd ask sarcastic questions when he clearly wanted to be left alone, and yet, He didn't walk away, she made him laugh, she challenged him. She didn't care about who he was or how much money he had mainly because he never told her, and he liked that. One evening, she knocked on his door holding 2 plates of pasta. "You look like the kind of guy who hasn't eaten something homemade in a year." He raised a brow. "What makes you think that? Your fridge has sparkling water and protein bars. You need help." They ate on his back deck, watching the sunset over the ocean. "You really came here to be alone, huh?" she said after a while. He looked at her. "Yeah, and yet here we are again." He stared at her, the way her hair glowed in the fading light, the way her laugh made everything feel less heavy, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel alone at all. "You ever think maybe life throws people at you for a reason?" she asked softly. He didn't answer, but he knew. He was supposed to be alone this week, and somehow she was the only thing that made sense. Vincent stood barefoot on the cool concrete of his back patio, watching the ocean churn beneath a rising breeze. The sky had turned slate gray, streaked with clouds that threatened rain, and the air carried the kind of charged stillness that always came before a storm. He welcomed it. Storms cleared things, washed away the clutter. He wasn't expecting a knock. When he opened the door, Poppy stood in her rain jacket, holding a paper grocery bag cradled in one arm and a bottle of red wine in the other. "I brought lasagna," she said, brushing hair from her face before the wind could catch it. "And no, it's not in a Tupperware. I actually put effort in this time." He stepped aside without a word, watching as she walked in like she belonged there. She set the food on the counter and began unpacking it, plates, napkins, mismatched forks like she'd pulled them from her own drawer. "You're not great at saying no, are you?" she asked without looking at him. "I don't usually have to." She shot him a glance. "Let me guess, people don't ask. They don't stay long enough to." She let that hang in the air for a beat before pouring the wine. "Then it's a good thing I'm stubborn." Dinner passed with the kind of ease that surprised him. She told him about a student who had accidentally glued their sleeve to a canvas. He told her about a failed prototype he once pitched that had mistakenly emailed every investor a video of him falling asleep at his desk. They laughed. A lot. But somewhere between the second glass of wine and the quiet roll of thunder outside, something shifted. "You always this good at pretending you're fine?" she asked, her tone softer now. He looked at her sharply. "I'm not pretending." She leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You walk like you're holding your breath, like if you let it out, you'll disappear." He didn't respond right away. "I lost my dad 2 years ago," he said finally, voice low. "I built everything from scratch, burned myself out doing it, and when I finally made it, I thought he'd be there to see it." He wasn't. Her expression didn't change. She didn't offer pity, just presence. "I'm sorry," she said, and it was the kind of sorry that didn't try to fix it. "I know what that ache feels like." He studied her. "You lost someone," she nodded. "My sister, cancer." She was 26. Silence stretched between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. "She used to say I was too careful," Poppy said, smiling faintly. "Always painting in safe colors. After she died, I started using orange, bright, wild orange. Just to prove her wrong." Vincent watched her, something unfamiliar tightening in his chest. She wasn't like anyone he'd ever known. She didn't hide behind charm or small talk. She let things be messy. Honest. The storm broke then, rain hammering the glass walls around them. Poppy stood and walked to the edge of the patio barefoot, letting the water soak through her jeans and jacket. "What are you doing?" he called. "Living," she shouted over her shoulder. "You should try it, Vincent." He hesitated, then stepped out into the downpour. She laughed when he joined her, hair drenched instantly. "Told you it's not so bad." He looked at her, water dripping from her lashes, cheeks flushed from the cold. Then, without thinking, he reached for her waist and pulled her in. She didn't move away. She tilted her chin up instead, eyes locked on his. The kiss was inevitable. Slow at first, then urgent, like something they'd both been holding back finally cracked open. When they pulled apart, she whispered, "You really don't do halfway, do you?" He touched her cheek, heart pounding. "Not when it matters." That night, she didn't go home. She curled up on his couch in one of his shirts, barefoot, sketching on a notepad while he sat beside her in silence. He glanced at the drawing. It was his face, half-finished, raw and imperfect. "You make me look better than I am," he said. No, she replied. I just draw what's already there, you just don't see it yet. He didn't sleep much, not because of her, but because everything felt different now. The quiet he'd craved so desperately had been replaced with something louder, more alive. And for the first time since arriving, he didn't want to retreat. The next morning, she was gone when he woke. A note sat on the counter in her loopy handwriting. Went to school early parent-teacher conference. Coffee's on. Don't pretend you don't like it. He chuckled under his breath, pouring himself a mug. Later that afternoon, he walked next door for the first time without hesitation. Her porch was empty, but the door was cracked open. Music filtered out low, instrumental, nothing he recognized. He stepped inside and was hit with the scent of turpentine and citrus. She was in the back room, standing in front of a canvas taller than she was. Her hands were covered in paint, and so was her cheek. She didn't notice him at first. When she finally turned, she grinned. Caught me mid-chaos, he crossed his arms. You always paint barefoot, only when I'm trying to feel something. He stepped closer, eyeing the canvas. It was abstract color clashing with movement, but something about it felt personal. What is it? He asked. She hesitated. Something I couldn't say out loud. He looked at her then, really looked. Say it now. She wiped her hands on a towel, breathing in slow. I think I want you to stay. His throat tightened. I was only supposed to be here a week. I know, she said, voice steady. But what if you weren't? He didn't answer, not yet, but something inside him cracked open, wider than before. And for the first time in years, he didn't feel like running. Poppy didn't ask him to stay again, not with words. Instead, she left the front door unlocked every evening after school, a habit she claimed helped the airflow in the summer heat. But Vincent knew better. It was for him an invitation without pressure, and every night he walked through it. They fell into something that wasn't quite a routine and wasn't quite an accident. She'd cook with music playing too loud, and he'd sit on the counter, pretending not to enjoy the way she danced while chopping vegetables. He'd fix her leaky faucet without being asked, and she'd act like it was the most impressive feat in the world. They never said what any of it meant, but every glance and touch spoke volumes. One night she asked, "What's your worst fear?" He said, "Wasting time." She said, "Mine's not finishing something I started." Then she looked at him like that meant more than it sounded. The next morning he found her in her garden, tearing out weeds with a kind of frustrated fury. Mud streaked her calves and she didn't look up when he approached. "You okay?" he asked. "I missed a commission deadline," she said, yanking a root from the ground. "Client's furious, and I don't even care. That's the worst part." He crouched beside her. "Why didn't you finish it?" She pulled her hair back with muddy hands. "I couldn't paint what they wanted. It felt hollow." "You've said yes to too many things that didn't matter." She looked at him, eyes narrowing. "That sounds familiar." He didn't deny it. Later, when he returned to his rental, he pulled out his laptop for the first time since arriving. It still had the same unread messages, the same investor proposals waiting for approval, the same spreadsheet tabs open like ghosts of his old life. He closed it without touching a key. That evening, Poppy surprised him with a picnic basket and no explanation. She led him barefoot down a narrow path behind her house that curved toward the cliffs. The sea stretched wide beneath them, a jagged horizon of blues and grays. She laid out a blanket, opened a bottle of lemonade, and pointed to the sky. "My sister used to say every time we look up, someone else is looking back," she said. "Not in a creepy way, just makes you feel less alone." He didn't look at the sky, he looked at her. "What would she think of me?" Poppy smiled faintly. "She'd say you were too serious, and that you needed someone to throw you into the deep end." He laughed under his breath. "She'd get along with you. She was louder than me. I was the quiet one. That's hard to believe. I've had practice." They watched the sky until it turned lavender, then gold, then ink. The wind picked up, and she pulled his jacket tighter around herself without asking. He let her. "I saw your name in a magazine once," she said suddenly. "Back when you sold your company." He turned to her, startled. "I didn't recognize you when we met, but I remembered later." "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I wanted to know who you were now, not who they said you were then." He exhaled slowly. "And what do you know now?" "That you're tired of being defined by the wrong things." She didn't ask what came next, she didn't push. But that night when he kissed her again, it wasn't in the rain or under the influence of wine, it was deliberate, sober, real. The next day, he drove into town for the first time since he arrived. He wandered past the bookstore, the surf shop, the diner with peeling paint and a chalkboard menu. People waved. A few recognized him, but no one approached. He stopped at a gallery tucked between a bakery and a bike rental. Inside, local art lined the walls, seascapes, abstracts, portraits. In the far corner, 3 of Poppy's pieces hung quietly, bold colors, wild strokes. None of them had price tags. "She doesn't sell those," the woman behind the desk said. "Says they mean too much." Vincent stood in front of them for a long time. Each one felt like a secret she hadn't told him yet. That evening, she found him sitting on her porch. "You went into town," she said, surprised. "I saw your work." She looked away. "It's not finished." "They're perfect," she laughed dry. "You've been here, 6 days? You don't know perfect yet." He stood. "Come with me tomorrow." "Where? Anywhere, doesn't matter." She crossed her arms. "Why?" "Because when I leave," he stopped, jaw tightening. "I don't want it to feel like a goodbye." Her breath caught. "You're still leaving?" "I was supposed to." And now, he didn't know. She stepped closer. "If you go, just promise me something." He nodded. "Don't disappear. Don't ghost your life just because it stopped making sense." He reached for her hand. "I won't, not if you're in it." She went quiet, eyes searching his. "I don't want to be your vacation," she whispered. "You're not." Then, softly, "You're the reason I remembered who I used to be." That night, he didn't go back to the rental. He stayed with her, not because it was easier, but because it finally felt harder not to. And somewhere between the hours, with the ocean outside and her breath steady against his chest, he realized something terrifying. He hadn't planned on staying, but he wanted to, and that changed everything. The morning sky was the color of pale steel when Vincent opened the door to find a delivery man holding a wooden crate and a clipboard. "Vincent Dorian?" the man asked. Vincent nodded, signing without asking questions. He already knew what it was. Inside the crate, nestled in velvet, was the sculpture he'd commissioned only 2 days ago from a local artisan whose work he'd seen inside the gallery. A single piece of driftwood carved into a woman's profile, fierce, unpolished, real. It wasn't her face, it was her presence. He turned the sculpture slowly in his hands, then carried it next door without knocking. Poppy was barefoot in the kitchen, staining a strip of canvas with shades of crimson and coal. When she saw what he held, her brush paused midair. "That's for you," he said, her brow furrowed. "Why?" "Because I wanted you to know I see you." She took it carefully, fingers tracing the curve of the cheekbone. "This looks like how I feel when I paint, like I'm not trying to impress anyone." "That's how I see you," he said. She looked at him then, something shifting in her expression. "You're leaving today, aren't you?" His pulse thudded in his ears. "I was supposed to." She set the sculpture down slowly. "So what changed?" "I did." They didn't speak for a while. Outside, the wind stirred the jasmine vines climbing her railing. Inside, the silence buzzed with everything unsaid. "You know," she said eventually, "I used to imagine what it would be like to meet someone who didn't scare me into shrinking just to fit beside them." Vincent stepped closer. "And you showed up and didn't ask me to shrink. You just stood there and waited until I wanted to be seen." "I didn't realize I was waiting too," he said. She pressed her hand against his chest, right over his heart. "So what happens now?" He took her hand in his. "Come with me." "Where?" "Anywhere, everywhere. I want to build something again, but this time, not alone. I don't know what it looks like yet. I just know it starts with you." She shook her head slowly, though her eyes never left his. "I can't leave this town, Vincent. My students, my gallery, everything I've built, it's here." "I'm not asking you to give any of it up," he said. "I'll stay half the year, more if you'll let me. I'll bring the rest of my life here." She blinked. "You do that?" "I've had homes in every city, but none of them ever felt like one until I met you." Her breath caught. "You mean that?" "I do." A small laugh escaped her, disbelieving. "You're serious. You're not just saying this because it's romantic or because you're still caught up in the week." He held her gaze. "I've built empires, sold companies, I've made decisions that changed markets. But this choosing you is the first thing I've done that feels like building something that actually matters." She leaned up and kissed him, slow and sure, like she was answering a question he hadn't asked out loud. Later that day, they drove to the school where she taught. The children were painting self-portraits, and she introduced him simply as Vincent, a friend who used to make apps and now wanted to learn how to finger paint. He sat on one of the tiny stools, getting paint on his jeans and laughing when one of the kids asked if he was her boyfriend. "Maybe," he said, glancing at her, "if she'll have me." That night, she brought him to the rooftop of the bakery after hours, where strings of lights hung between chimneys and an old record player spun jazz at a whisper. She'd packed sandwiches and a bottle of the same red wine they'd shared on the second night. They danced beneath the stars, no music but the hum of the sea below and the quiet rhythm of their breath. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," she whispered against his shoulder. "I never thought anyone like you existed," he said. She pulled back just enough to look up at him, her fingers curled around the back of his neck. "If you're staying, I want to show you something." He followed her down 2 flights of stairs and into the back of the gallery. She unlocked a narrow storage room and pulled a cloth off a canvas leaning against the wall. The painting was unfinished but unmistakable. It was him not in form but in feel. The strokes were bold, the colors unlike anything she'd used before. Stormy blues, deep golds. A single streak of violent orange cutting through the center. "I started this the night after our first kiss," she said. "It's not done yet." He stared at it, speechless. "I didn't know what it was until now," she added. "It's the beginning of something." He turned to her. "Then let's finish it together." Weeks passed. Vincent extended his rental, then quietly purchased the house. He didn't tell her he just started planting herbs in the back garden and left his shoes by her door without taking them back. She noticed, of course, but she never said a word. She just started sketching him into the margins of her notebooks. They hosted a gallery opening in town for emerging artists, and he stood beside her as she introduced a new series called Rooted. Her students came. So did the owner of the gallery across town, who offered her a full solo show in the fall. Vincent started consulting again on tech projects, small ones, meaningful ones. He worked from the sunroom in her house, barefoot, with her cat curled on the windowsill and her laughter filtering in from the garden. One evening in early autumn, he took her hand as they walked the beach and stopped near the tide. "I know we didn't plan this," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his jacket. Her hand flew to her mouth. "But I've never been more sure of anything." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, a soft gold band with a single stone, not flashy but radiant. She didn't speak. Just nodded, eyes glassy, and threw her arms around him. They kissed there, ankle-deep in salt water, as the sun dipped below the horizon. He came looking for silence. He found her, and in choosing her, he finally found a life worth staying for. Vincent stood in the center of the old coastal theater as dust drifted through the shafts of late afternoon light. The place had been closed for years, its velvet seats faded, its stage warped with salt air, but the bones were still good. He could see it, the gallery lights above, the open space reimagined as a community hub. Not a flashy venture, not another corporate expansion. Something real, something meaningful. Poppy's voice echoed from the mezzanine. "You're actually going to do this?" He looked up. She leaned against the iron railing, her hands wrapped around a notebook, her expression unreadable. "I already filed the paperwork," he said. "I want this place to belong to the town. Art exhibits, workshops, theater nights, free admission. No strings." She descended the stairs slowly, watching him. "That's not a small project. I'm not interested in small," he replied. Not anymore. When she reached the floor, she looked around, her gaze lingering on the peeling walls and broken sconces. "It's going to take months. I've got time," he said, "and I've already hired a contractor, local." "What made you choose this?" she asked softly. He took her hand. "You did. You're the first person who showed me there's more to building than profit. You taught me what it feels like to create something that matters." Her fingers curled around his. "You're serious about staying." "I want roots, Poppy, and I want them here with you." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked to the stage, stepped onto the worn boards, and turned to face the empty rows. "I used to come here as a kid," she said. My sister would drag me to every community play. We used to sit in the front row, even when the seats were torn. She said this place made her feel like anything was possible. Vincent stepped onto the stage beside her. Then let's make sure it still does. She reached for his other hand. You really think we can pull this off? His smile was quiet but certain. With you. I know we can. Over the next 3 months, the theater transformed. Vincent worked side by side with the crew, hauling wood and sweeping floors, never once mentioning who he was or how much he'd invested. He didn't need to. His presence said everything. Poppy painted the new sign herself, the Vance Dorian Arts House, adding a burst of orange in the lettering that people in town quickly began to recognize as her signature. She hosted weekend workshops, helping kids create murals that would line the lobby walls. Vincent watched her in those moments, always with the same thought. She was the most alive person he'd ever met. One evening, after the final coat of paint dried and the lighting was tested, Poppy found him sitting alone in the front row. We open next weekend, she said, slipping into the seat beside him. I know. You nervous? He turned to her. Only about one thing. She raised an eyebrow. He reached into the pocket of his coat and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. It wasn't a contract or a blueprint, just a single sentence scribbled across it in ink that had smudged slightly at the edges. What is this? She asked, unfolding it. Read it. Her eyes scanned the words. Marry me under these lights, in this place, with the people we've built this for. She stared at it for a moment, motionless, then she looked up. You want to get married here? There's nowhere else that means more to us, and I don't want to wait. She studied him, as if memorizing every inch of his face. Then she smiled. Okay. The ceremony happened 1 week later, just before the grand opening. The stage was cleared, the seats filled with townspeople, students, artists, and friends. Poppy wore a simple dress that looked like it could have been painted with watercolors. Vincent stood at the end of the aisle in a charcoal suit, no tie, a single orange flower tucked into his lapel. The vows were short, but neither one needed many words. Their story had already said it all. After the applause quieted, Vincent took her hand and led her to the center of the stage. So, he said, what do you want to do now, Mrs. Dorian? She glanced at the crowd, then back at him. Let's open the doors, and they did. People poured into the lobby where the murals stretched from floor to ceiling. Kids pointed to their brushstrokes, parents cried. Local musicians played from the balcony. The scent of fresh popcorn wafted from the restored concession stand. It was messy, beautiful, exactly right. Later that night, after everyone had gone and the lights dimmed, Poppy curled into Vincent's side on the theater's old velvet seat. I never thought I'd fall in love on my front porch, she said. I never thought I'd fall in love and stay put, he replied. She tilted her head to look at him. You stayed because of me. I stayed because you reminded me who I could be. Her hand found his. So what's next? Doesn't matter, he said. As long as it's with you, she laughed softly. You're getting better at this romantic stuff. I've had a good teacher. Outside, the sea whispered against the cliffs. Inside, the theater glowed with soft light and the echoes of something new. And in the quiet that followed, they didn't say another word. They didn't need to, they were home. Together, always.